Hello, readers. Guess what? I'm going to read you a book today. Can you believe it? I know, it's crazy. The story today is called Wangari Maathai, the woman who planted millions of trees. And this is a biography. I want to put this over here. And the biography is written by Frank Privot, and it's illustrated by Aurelia Fronti. Okay, so if she wrote this herself, it would be called an autobiography. But because there's a different author and they wrote it about Wangari Maathai, we call this a biography, the story of someone's life. And if you're like me, you're going to feel really inspired by the end of this. So let's jump right in. Wangari Maathai, the woman who planted millions of trees. It's almost as if Wangari Maathai is still alive, since the trees she planted still grow. Those who care about the earth, as Wangari did, can almost hear her speaking the 4 languages she knew: Kikuyu, Swahili, English, and German, while she carried out her important work with people. Wangari encouraged many village women. She dug holes with them in the red soil, holes in which to plant hope for today and forests for tomorrow. When Wangari planted a large-leafed ebony tree or an African tulip tree, she was reminded of her own roots. When she was born in 1940 in the little village of Ihith, across from the majestic volcano, Mount Kenya, which her people consider holy. This is her story. Okay, just want to pause there. Notice the font change here. So this is a big hint from the author, or possibly from the illustrator, probably the author, that this italic stuff is sort of like the preface, sort of the introduction, and now we're starting into the actual biography, the story of her life. So this kind of gives us a little bit of background information and sort of hooks us in, right? Okay, here is her story. The immense forest around Wangari's childhood home is populated by bongo antelopes, monkeys, and butterflies. The leopard, called the Ngari by Wangari's people, lives here too. It may be because Wangari means she who belongs to the leopard, that Wangari feels as though she is part of the entire forest. Wangari fetches water every day at the foot of the big mugumu tree, the generous fig tree. As the eldest sister of 5 siblings, she is the second lady of the house. She helps her mother with countless tasks: gathering wood for the fire, cooking, looking after the little children, and doing farm chores. Wangari's mother gives her a little garden. Wangari learns to dig and plant. In the shade of the big mingumo, her mother teaches her that a tree is worth more than its wood, an expression Wangari never forgets. Wangari's father works for Sir Neilon, one of the ruling British colonists. The British claim the best land for themselves and insist that Kenyans take Christian names. As a result, Wangari is called Miriam during her childhood. The British grow richer by cutting trees to plant more tea. Wangari remembers the first trees she saw fall. She doesn't yet know that she can change things with her voice and her hands. One evening, in their little house made of mud walls and dried dung, Wangari's big brother, Nderitu, asked their mother a question. Why doesn't Wangari go to school? Wangari knows the answer. Daughters must help their mothers before getting married and having children of their own. But without even realizing it, Ninderitu changes things by asking his question. A few days later, Wangari is running joyfully to school with her brothers and cousins. She is thankful to Ninderitu for asking the right questions and to her mother for making the decision that will change Wangari's life. Wangari wants to know and understand everything, and going to school helps her succeed. She receives her high school diploma at a time when very few African women even learn to read. I'm going to pause here for a second because there's a big jump in these two paragraphs where we really have to infer some things. Because here, Wangari's brother asks, why doesn't Wangari go to school? Wangari knows the answers. Daughters have to work and help mothers, okay? And then a few days later, Wangari is running joyfully to school with her brothers and cousins. We have to make an inference here, right? It doesn't say, and so then Wangari's mom reflected and thought this isn't really fair. So then she went to the school and she said, we're going to send Wangari to school and talk to the dad. And like, no, it just skips that whole chunk, right? But as readers, we can pick up what is left out, right? That's what we do when we infer. Something else I want to point out on this previous page is that we're learning a lot about history here, right? We learned Wangari was born in 1940 and she was born in Kenya, and we can see here that there was British colonists living in Kenya at that time. Colonists are people who colonize a country. So they go to this country, they say, okay, this is ours now. And that's what the British did in Kenya and all over the world, actually. And so we're learning like a lot about history through the story of Wangari's life. And I think that is one of the amazing things about biographies, because not only are we learning about this one person's life, but we're learning about the world at that time of her life. Okay, let's keep going. Senator John F. Kennedy, the future U.S. president, invites 600 young Kenyans to come to the United States to pursue their studies. Wangari is one of the students. For the next 5 years, Wangari discovers snow, forests of skyscrapers, and people who look nothing like her. Even cornfields in America are different from those at home. Wangari also discovers that even in a great, free, independent country, some places are forbidden to Black people. Just like at home, some schools are for white people only. During the 1960s, angry African Americans demanded the same rights as white people. At the same time, in faraway Kenya, another anger turns into triumph. For more than 10 years, Black people have been demanding the right to cultivate their own land and govern their own country. Now they achieve independence from Britain at last. When Wangari returns home, the British colonists are no longer the masters of Kenya. The country is free, but the trees are not. They still cannot grow in peace. Kenyans are cutting down the trees and selling them as the colonists did. By using the land where the trees used to grow to cultivate tea, coffee, and tobacco sought by rich countries, they can make more money. Wangari travels through the country to study wildlife and is shocked. Wild animals are rare now. They have fled the chainsaws. Women can no longer feed their children since plantations for rich people have replaced food-growing farms. Rivers are muddy. The soil has been washed away by rain because there are no tree roots to hold it back. Wow. When forests are clear-cut, it causes so many more problems than just removing trees, right? We can see all of this information here in this paragraph. It's really like telling the story of what happens when a forest is cut. Now, Wangari knows how she will make use of her studies and the people she has met. She will explain to the world's great leaders and to Kenya's farmers that a forest is one of the most precious treasures of humanity. She'll tell them that planting thousands of trees will help change the lives of men and women, black and white, rich and poor, in Kenya and elsewhere. Wangari knows that a tree is worth much more than its wood, as her mother taught her. A tree is a treasure that provides shade, fruit, pure air, and nesting places for birds, and that it pulses with the vitality of life. Trees are hideouts for insects and provide inspiration for poets. A tree is a little bit of the future. Wangari wants to shout to the world, but change happens slowly. She doesn't want to wait. So in 1977, she creates the Green Belt movement in order to start planting trees immediately. Traveling from village to village, she speaks on behalf of the trees, animals, and children. She asks that people think about the future, even if the present is harsh and difficult. She encourages villagers to discuss their problems in their own words, in the language of their tribe. Her words travel to villages, into newspapers, and through letters to the Kenyan government and international organizations. She needs to raise money because replacing hundreds of thousands of missing trees is expensive. Now, let's think about this, because in 1977, there was no internet. There weren't even like computers or printers or things where you could really get the word out in a quick, efficient way, right? She had to do so much work to get all these people involved and to advocate for her ideas. Wangari creates tree nurseries across Kenya, which she entrusts to village women. She provides the women with a financial bonus for each tree that grows. Government officials who built their fortunes by raising forests try to stop Wangari. Raising means to cut, clear cut. Who is this woman who confronts them with a confident voice in a country where women are supposed to listen and lower their eyes in a man's presence? Wangari believes confident women have an important role to play in their families, in their villages, and on the entire African continent. She can't be quiet. With countless sisters to help, she who belongs to the leopard doesn't get discouraged. She keeps planting forests. Wangari is determined not to let one more single tree be cut down. She doesn't lower her eyes, even when she faces President Daniel Arap Moi, who will rule Kenya for the next 24 years. He wants to build a 60-story building and a statue of himself in the heart of Uhuru Park in Nairobi. Wangari rallies her friends to fight the bulldozers, and the project is abandoned. The President Moi then plans to launch a huge real estate project in Karua's forest, which would threaten endangered species such as the blue monkeys and the river hog. Wangari stands tall. She calls the world to the rescue, replants the trees, and forces the president to back off. After her victories, a Kenyan man tells her, "You are the only man left standing." But standing up against authoritarian power of Daniel Arap Moi is dangerous. Wangari is now a threat. She knows that the president will stop at nothing to silence her. He is a powerful man who orders police to shoot at crowds of demonstrators. She's humiliated, hit, hurt, and imprisoned several times, but she doesn't give up. Each time she is released, she fights to liberate political prisoners and speaks out against torture. Wangari receives death threats and often must hide outside of Kenya. But she perseveres. Wangari wants to make democracy grow like trees. She knows that if her people work together to decide the laws of her country, it will become stronger. She dreams that Kenya's children will be able to play with the tadpoles in clear water under fig trees at the edge of the great forests. She wants them to be able to eat when they're hungry. Wangari quickly realizes how many more battles she must fight in order to save the trees. She runs several times for elected office, creates an environmental party, and rallies the opposition to try to bring down Daniel Arap Moi. Facing rising protest, President Moi tries to divide the people in order to rule. He knows that when tribes fight one another, the president can quietly govern the way he wants. Wangari and the Greenbelt movement help foil Moi's trap. She suggests offering young plants from tree nurseries to neighboring tribes in symbolic gestures of peace. Little by little, those peace trees bear their fruits. Wangari even succeeds in convincing soldiers to help her cultivate friendships among the tribes. That's incredible. I love that. She facilitated peace when the president was trying to rip these tribes apart by offering trees as a symbol of peace. She brought them together. President Daniel Arap Moi finally falls in 2002. The country has a new constitution, which requires him to retire, and his party loses the election. Wangari is elected to parliament. The new president appoints her Assistant Minister of the Environment, Natural Resources, and Wildlife. For Wangari, now affectionately called Mama Miti, or Mother of the Trees, a new part of her story begins. She now holds the power to make decisions. She can finally work to make Kenya a fair nation for women, men, and trees. And that is the end of the bold print. Remember in the beginning, we saw that change in the text. So here's the bold ending. And now it goes back to italics as like a little conclusion. There are more trees in Kenya than there were when Wangari began her work, and democracy has been established. The Greenbelt movement still protects trees, such as those in the Congo Basin, the second largest tropical rainforest in the world. Wangari Maathai and her supporters planted more than 30 million trees. And every day, even now, new ones are planted in Kenya. Wangari Maathai was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize on October 8, 2004, for the countless seeds of hope she planted and grew over the years. She was the first African woman to receive the prize. To celebrate, she planted a Nandi flame tree at her home in Nyeri at the base of Mount Kenya. The mountain and its inhabitants of the forest around it, leopards, bongo antelopes, and other wild animals and humans, must have been proud that day. The end. And there's a little bit more information about, like an author's note. We can see that her birthday, and then also she died in 2011. And then here's a real photograph of her. Wow. I hope that you feel inspired. I know I sure do. Amazing things happen with just planting small seeds of hope.